Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching the Patreon bonus stories. So our first one here is that Google and Alphabet, which is owned by
It is
Google, and Uber have all invested over $300 million in these. These are these electric scooters. Now, if you haven't been to a major city lately, like San Francisco, Santa Monica.
And lately, we mean like the past 2, 3, 4 months.
Right. Then you probably don't know what we're talking about. But basically, these are scooter companies that leave a scooter basically anywhere. With an app, you walk up to it, you turn it on, and you start riding it, and it charges your app. And then, and by charge, I mean
credit card.
Monetarily charges you. And then you drive across the city or whatever, and then you leave it wherever you left it. And then you go on with your day.
And some cities hate it because it's
a lot of cities,
a bit of a public nuisance.
Yeah, it's kind of, because if you think about it, a scooter doesn't have real rules that anyone knows about. Is it allowed to be on the sidewalk?
Right. Is it a bike? Is it not a bike?
How fast can it go? You know, because you could ride it pretty fast on a sidewalk and scare people. So yeah, they're trying to find out how to make them work. In some cities, they work really well, like the Los Angeles, like Santa Monica is very wide streets and stuff like that. But anyway, lots of people like them because they're a fast way to get around the city. They're really cheap.
Right. You don't need to bike. You don't need to get all sweaty. You don't need to run.
You don't need to go to a hub to pick them up or to leave them. You just drop them off in front of your building.
They're cheaper than a taxi or Uber or a Lyft or a Subway.
And here's the takeaway for me is that up until this point, it was like, well, is this a thing or not? Well, if you see big money like this is $1 billion being thrown into it by some big companies, you got to say to yourself that if they're ready to jump in, then it's probably a thing.
Right. And this is the interesting part. This could never have been a thing for as long as humanity has existed, right? There was just no way you could have a self-propelled scooter unless it was gas-powered.
Right.
There's no way you could have a quiet, clean, not completely stinky two-stroke kind of scooter zipping around your city.
And right, I mean, there's a convergence of technologies. You have to have the smartphone, you have to have electric, you have to have all these things meeting at the same time.
But most importantly, I think, is the lithium-ion battery. And in enough, meaningful numbers and quantity that you can go across a city in it.
And Jesse and I have done these. We were in Santa Monica at a Tesla event, and we were like, first day we're like, no,
yeah, that's ridiculous. Then we saw
the second day
people
we're like,
riding on it, and then we're like,
okay, we got to
try it.
And it was fun.
Oh man,
it turned the day into, instead of just like a boring day, it was like one of the best days.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I mean, that was the day that we didn't even this was after we had seen the Model 3 unveiling,
right?
Mind you, and we still were like, well, that was really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, these things are amazing, and I just want to point out, so many cities are like, oh, these things, we got to ban these things suck. But keep in mind, what if they had dropped a bunch of gas scooters on the street?
Oh, I know.
It would be mayhem.
Well,
and they would be off the street immediately. It would be like, no, you're not riding that thing. That thing stinks. That thing is loud.
Right.
And it's full of gasoline. What? Get the heck out of here.
And they wouldn't work. I mean, because, to start a small motor, they don't.
Okay. Yeah. You're going to, okay, press the button on your app and now pull the motor. It just wouldn't happen. So, I mean, yeah. It's
all right. You remember from our In-Depth last week, we talked about Lynette Lopez. She was the reporter from Business Insider. Well, she's now been on CNBC, so let's watch this and see what we think.
This all started because Musk took issue with a story that you posted on Business Insider on June 4th, which said the following. We have it up on the screen. Internal documents reveal Tesla is blowing through an insane amount of raw material and cash to make Model 3s, and production is still a nightmare. That's where this all began, right?
That's where this all began. I also published a story last week about the fact that Tesla stopped doing break-and-roll tests towards the end of its Model 3 production while they were getting to their 5,000 goal, which Musk, made a huge public statement about how this $5,000 car goal was going to make or break the company. And, my reporting indicates, and CNBC confirmed, they stopped doing this crucial test that every car company does to check the brakes and the alignment on their cars.
Now, we're presuming some of your reporting came from this whistleblower from Tesla by the name of Martin Tripp.
That's right.
To which Elon Musk said in another tweet, Lynette Lopez, did you compensate or promise to compensate Martin Tripp for inside information about Tesla? I could go on, but let's just stop there. And just for the record, did you compensate or attempt to compensate, ask to compensate Martin Tripp for any of the information that you got?
Absolutely not. And as Business Insider put out in their statement, this is I would prefer to talk about the reporting, and it's up to shareholders to decide whether or not the CEO of a $50 million company should spend his time yelling at reporters on Twitter. What my reporting indicates is that the mission of Tesla is not really quite in line with the manufacturing of Tesla, which is to say, Elon Musk has for years promised a high-quality car that is environmentally friendly, and what we're seeing coming out of both Tesla factories is not exactly that. And part of that is because of Musk's desire to consistently do everything differently. I'll give you an example here. I've had a source inside of the Gigafactory tell me that all of the assembly lines are straight instead of rectangular conveyor belts. He didn't understand why this would be a thing, since the rectangle makes it so that you can see how parts are doing as they go down the line. These are small details about how you make a car that Musk isn't translating to Tesla because he just wants to be different.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So first of all, wow, pretty damning evidence here.
Yeah.
Straight conveyor belts.
I love how she basically had
my
one long
goodness.
sentence,
Right.
and each thing was, I'm gonna tell you how he's not keeping up with his mission, but then she never said what it was that he didn't do to keep up with his mission.
Those straight conveyor belts, you know how unsustainable those things are.
Well, and they create waste.
Yeah.
Every factory creates
It's like-
waste. It doesn't mean that, first of all, they throw it in a big pile.
Right.
Second of all, they, so it could be recycled and so forth. And yeah, this
So
is not.
first of all, they call Martin Tripp whistleblower.
Right.
Now, that remains to be seen here. I mean,
Well, this
Yeah.
CNBC, this is just a piece of the clip. She basically, in this entire clip, explains that Martin Tripp is her source. And that's a big point here, because now we've connected the dots. Martin Tripp is her source
Right.
for these stories. We now know a lot more about Martin Tripp. We know that he's disgruntled. We know that he's been discredited on many of the statements that he's made. So her statements, therefore, her reporting, therefore, should be either severely questioned or discredited entirely, because all of it came from one source who was giving you
whatever you wanted.
Right.
You know, he'll say whatever you want, because he wants his story to be told, because you're disgruntled. Whenever
Okay.
you're disgruntled, that's what you do.
Elon wants to be different, so he makes straight conveyor belts and doesn't understand how conveyor belts should work. Like, first of all, excuse me, Lynette. He's one of the most brilliant people who's ever lived on this planet. And you mean to tell me that because his conveyor belts don't work the way you think they should, that he doesn't know what he's doing, that he's not caring about the planet, that his mission doesn't line up with what he's actually doing?
Right. Lynette has a source at the Gigafactory now. And
Well,
this
no,
is...
she had a source. Martin's gone.
Okay. But this is the best she could get.
Right.
The break and roll test, which was redundant, the amount of scrap
but
they were
every
producing.
car does the break and roll test.
Right. Except,
First of all, this is unlike any other car in the world, so maybe you don't need the same test anymore.
well, I mean, they said that they have a redundant
that's
test.
but that's what I'm saying. If this is the same test that's been used for basically decades on a dyno machine, right? If you now have a car that basically brakes without actually pressing brakes together, you might need new tests to test it.
Right. But regardless of that, it was a redundant test. So then you have waste numbers, which are just
In line with all industry standards.
whatever, normal.
Right.
And then these straight
Conveyor belts.
Conveyor belts. And that's all you got.
That's the best of what you got.
And you're like, there's much more to come. It's like you had one source.
Oh, I don't think there's anything more to come. Her source is gone.
She would not be on the air if she had more stuff, because she'd be like, I'm ready to write some more articles.
That's right. You
because
know why
of
she's
all
on
of
the
my-
air?
Right.
She's trying to boost this last bit of
She's like,
nothingness.
this is all I've got. I've got to milk it for everything that it's worth.
And she's got to cover up the fact that she's been called out on Twitter, and her reputation's ruined.
Right. Now, I mean, she said that she did not compensate Martin Tripp. Now, if you were to take the legal schmiegel, lawyer McGoyer view of this, I mean, I would just say, like, okay, well, maybe you didn't compensate Tripp, but like maybe Chanos compensated Tripp. Like that, you can
Or maybe there was a promise,
you could
right.
say that and still not have it bite your butt in court, right?
Right.
Because but it wasn't me. Your Honor, it was Jim Chanos who compensated Martin Tripp for this information. So I mean, like, it's not like that was. It's not like that's the end of it. And like, oh, okay,
Here's the other thing: reporters have sources. That's happened throughout time.
right.
you have different sources that you trust different levels. Usually you have multiple sources so you can corroborate. So you can go, well, Jesse said this, Fred said that. They're two different things, so now I don't have a story. I have to find someone else who will back up one of their stories.
Right.
If you only have one guy telling you one thing, how do you get that corroborated?
Right.
And even if you did corroborate it, this stuff sounds like bogus stuff anyway. Straight conveyor belts, piles of trash. What are you talking about?
Right. And even if, let's just say, let's just take this for what, for as far as it goes. Let's say that they're producing more scrap than they should. First of all, this is the first production run of a brand new car.
Right.
So somewhat to be expected. Second of all, to say that it's not in line with Tesla's vision. I mean, their goal is to make a high quality car, as she says, that doesn't pollute, and they do that. They do, like, nowhere in it is it like every step of our system will be the most sustainable
will be
thing
zero, right, exactly.
ever, and we promise. And if we don't do that, then you should, not believe us about anything, right? And but here's the thing: like, they do try to reduce all of their waste. Like, they get their cobalt not from the Congo. They try and source it from other sources and stuff like that. So, like, they actually give a...
Can I just also show the bigger picture here? Let's talk about CNBC. If you're Jim Chanos, where do you go to talk? CNBC. If you're Lynette Lopez, where do you go to talk? CNBC. You know why? Because they don't ask you any questions. They don't ask you anything tough at all. They ask you a question that you've already been prepped on. Well, Elon says this. What's your response? Right. They already know the response. They didn't ask follow-up questions. They don't dig deep. They don't say, well, that's not how you report a story. Nothing. Why? Because they've got an agenda.
Right. And if Elon, first of all, they probably wouldn't. They probably would let Elon on the show, but here's what they would do.
They've said publicly they would.
They would put a line between the two of them. He would probably be at the Fremont factory because he's a busy frickin' guy. And, he'd be sitting in the Fremont factory trying to answer some questions. And then this line would appear to his left, and Lynette Lopez would appear. And then she would say no, you're not, blah, 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 blah. She would be able to just pepper him with annoying things. And he's not the best public speaker. This is why he's not on the show, because he knows that, like, it wouldn't do anything.
Well,
for him
and it's
to
not
be
a believable network to be on.
Right. Then there's this whole thing of, like, I'm being bullied by Elon Musk.
You wrote an article about him.
Right. But
he's responding to it.
And read his damn tweets. Everyone's like, he's writing all these Trumpy tweets. It's like, have you ever read a Trump tweet?
Right.
Now, after you've read that,
read an Elon
go
tweet.
to Elon. So all the people who are complaining, like, he's writing Trump tweets. It's like, okay, if you don't like Trump tweets, first of all, read the Trump tweets. Now, go over to Elon. These are very just like, it's like you were sitting around a table and he's like, hey, is this true? There's no like, I can prove it. This is a witch hunt. This is blah, 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 right? None of that. There's none of this, like, yelling kind of thing.
He was asking questions, basically.
Right.
In fact, that led to this whole thing on CNBC.
Because she's so scared.
Right.
And the only reason it's if it was a load of horse crap, all of his accusations,
she would have pulled out.
She would have been like, no, absolutely not. Don't even. What are you even talking about?
Right. She would have pulled out the notes and she would have said, here's my answers to his questions. Right. She had no answers to his questions.
So anyway, I hope this just shuts up, because this is ridiculous.
All right, this next story from Vox, I'd like you guys to watch it here. This is about oil hair booms.
Right.
It'll make more sense in a second.
This is the Guimaras oil spill of 2006, and it's the worst of its kind in the Philippines' history. More than 130,000 gallons of bunker oil gushed into the Panay Gulf. In an attempt to contain the spill, locals turned to an unconventional method. These freaky-looking sausage things aren't all filled with synthetic materials fabricated in a lab. It's also organic stuff you can find on most continents and probably in your shower drain. It's human hair. After the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, Phil McCroy, a hairstylist in Alabama, had a novel idea for the cleanup effort. On TV, he noticed how a sea otter's fur had become saturated with oil and thought if that's what oil would do to an otter's fur, then the same must be true for human hair. He took scraps of hair trimmings from work, stuffed them into his wife's pantyhose, and tested his new invention in a small spill he created at his house. NASA studied and confirmed Phil's invention worked.
I called every hairstylist in Alabama till I found him. He said that his garage was full of hair being donated from salons all over the place, but he had never been able to make a business out of it. And so from like around 2000, 2001, we were partners.
They teamed up on the Clean Wave program. It collects donated hair, fur, feathers, and other fibers to make recycled felted mats and hair booms that can mop up oil spills. Turns out, hair is pretty good at cleaning up oil. It repels water and can collect contaminants.
Water goes into a sponge and it blows up, and that's called absorbent. But oil coats hair on the outside, so like it's called adsorbent.
Hair is also natural, cheap, and renewable, which makes it an ideal material for cleaning up oil spills. Making a hair boom is pretty straightforward. All you need is human hair and pantyhose. Take the hair, stuff it into the hose, and voila. After getting over the freaky feeling of handling someone else's clumped up hair, place it into contaminated water and watch the hair boom do its thing.
There's little diesel spills all the time. So like every little harbor can use that stuff. You know, it was a great way to just kind of string from dock to dock and kind of protect your private beaches.
But hair booms and hair mats haven't been the principal method to clean major oil spills. They weren't used extensively in the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon spill, where over the course of 87 days, 134 million gallons of oil gushed into the Gulf of Mexico. Instead, crews used 1.8 million gallons of chemical dispersants, oil skimmers, fire, and booms and barriers made of synthetic material to clean up the mess. With oil spills, time is of the essence. The longer oil is in the ocean, the harder it is to retrieve. The immediate ecological impact of oil spills is obvious. It kills marine wildlife and destroys habitats and breeding grounds. The chemicals used to clean up oil spills also pose a danger to human health. As of now, hair booms and hair mats are not the primary tools used to contain oil spills. But possibly one day, they could be.
It was very interesting for us to see the public desire to help. There's so many hair salons in every city.
And billions more people with hair to spare. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that help for the next oil spill may be just one snip away.
All right, so the takeaway for me from this is really kind of cool, which is that Phil McCrory, you saw him, he's the hairstylist from Alabama who's in the story. Mm-hmm. He got this idea right after seeing these oil spills, and he's like, hair, that's good at absorbing or adsorbing.
Right, and the only reason he thought about this was because he works with hair every single day, because that's his job.
So he saw this, he had an idea, and he tested it out using science, right? Put stuff into a pantyhose, put it into a thing of oil, it worked.
Right.
And then someone heard about this, contacted him. They formed Clean Wave project together.
Right.
And now anyone in the world can use the same technology,
right.
Pretty low-grade technology, right? But to absorb oil spills.
Right. And, I mean, it's not like he was able to do this all on his own. It's not like he went to Shark Tank and was like, look at this, hair in a pantyhose. What do you think, guys? And they're like, I'll support you for $1 million. Like, no. That didn't happen. He was struggling. He was like, I have this idea and it's not getting through to people. He needed that somebody else, you know, and maybe it would have worked on Shark Tank. I kind of doubt it because they'd be like, I don't understand. This isn't commercial, you know, whatever. But yeah, having someone else contact him of like, I know how to make this work into a thing.
And that's the power of the internet.
Right.
I mean, we're here. Everyone on the earth now can share ideas and visually show you their idea. And then someone on the other side of the planet can see it and pick it up.
Right. And the most important thing is here, he was a hairstylist. Like, he had hair in his hands every day, and he swept up hair every day. And so when he looked at the television, instead of seeing a sea otter covered in oil, he saw hair covered in oil. Right. And he's like, wait a minute, that's hair, and it seems to absorb it. Wait a minute. Light bulb went off in his head. It wouldn't have gone off in like 99.9% of people's brains because that simply wouldn't have happened. That is so powerful. Then, this is the other crucial part, is that he was like, I'm going to do something with this. So many times, I'm sure you've gotten an idea in your head, and you went,
And then that's it.
And then you're like, there's like a bunch of other reasons of like, no, that wouldn't work. No, that's stupid. Or like, don't do that. You're busy doing other things.
He tried it.
And it's all gone, right? He tried it. it wasn't. It's not even like it was an amazing success and it just took off. It was just like he was working at it for a while, right, for years.
And then someone else heard about it and contacted him, and she had to do a lot of legwork to find him. She said basically she had to call every hairstylist in Alabama before she could find him.
Right. So I mean, this is important. Just the takeaway here is for you. You know, this isn't just some like global like we should do this or do that. You, if you have a good idea, you should let people know about it, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's, you know, contacting your favorite YouTube channel like us, and maybe if you have a great idea and we think it's a great idea, we can like put it out there and be like, hey, one of our friends had this wonderful idea.
Right.
And then someone else, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of freaking awesome people watch this channel. A lot of freaking awesome people watch this Patreon shoutouts.
That's right.
Someone is probably gonna go, that's a great idea. I know how to help. Right? And they will get in contact with you and make it all work.
All starts here.
It all starts here. And then you have to do a lot more work, but like it can all happen, and this is the age in which it can all happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be like you'd be in your little provincial town in, you know, the Middle Ages or even the Renaissance, even the, you know, 1800s. You'd have some idea and maybe you'd be famous in like your county, but you'd never get heard of anywhere else.
Right.
You know, today you can go on Facebook, you can go on YouTube, and you can shout out your idea. And if it works and someone hears about it,
he was from Alabama. He wasn't in Silicon Valley or in New York. He was in the middle of nowhere practically.
Right. And it's such an amazing idea. Let's just talk. I mean, like, you just take hair, which every human makes, basically.
You soak up oil.
You stuff it in a pantyhose, which is prolific around the globe. And then you can soak up oil spills with it.
And you know, the other thing, just watching this video reminded me of how many oil spills there are.
Right.
It's just sad. I mean, did you see about that one in the Philippines there with just, you know, 130,000 gallons of bunker fuel? Like, oh my gosh, the worst stuff on the planet.
Right. And like, we just want to put an end to that. So thank you so much for being wonderful, amazing Patreon supporters. I mean, we're finally getting to the point where, you know, with all the money that we're bringing in from Patreon and from YouTube revenue and from other sources, that we're actually able to start to pay for our editors and for, you know, some of the gear that we've been buying constantly to try and make this show as great as possible. And here's the exciting part. You might be saying, well, Zach and Jesse, if you were able to afford paying for these editors for 97 episodes, like, shouldn't you be, you know, why do you need our support? We need your support because we need to do more. Right?
That's right.
This isn't enough. Like, I mean, we're doing awesome. This is amazing. But we want to do more stuff. And so the more money that we don't have to be pouring into our editors and into our gear and stuff like that, the more that that's taken care of by you wonderful people, the more we get to, you know, go out there and report on news, talk to people, make one-on-one connections with people of, like, you know, giving them rides in cars. You know, we're going to get that semi truck and we're going to just change people's minds in the places in the world where minds are hardly ever changed. So thank you so much for being Patreon supporters. We really couldn't do this without you.
I want to give a big shout out to Jeff this week because he was ready as backup for you, Jesse. You're feeling
You might notice that my voice sounds a little different. Yeah, yesterday I was in bed all day. Yeah. And the day before that, I was...
Yeah, so we're really sorry to Bruno at the CT
I was
EV event that we missed.
I didn't want to get everyone there sick. It was some terrible cold.
But you know, Jeff Manning stepped up. He was ready to take over as co-host. I really appreciate that, Jeff. And that's what I mean. This is a community. It takes a community to make this show work. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being our Patreons. Now you know.